Hi there, hope you're all doing well. This week I picked up Captain Black Fang from One Page Rules and had to get him painted up. Starting off, I primed him black and used Faust blue to do the base coat on the coat and the waistcoat. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. You could also join Discord using the link in the description, where you can share anything you have been hobbying on, or just hang out and chat. I hope you enjoyed the video and find it useful. With the base coat down, I started mixing in some blue grey and just went over the bulk again with this brighter tone. The pure Faust blue is just left in the shadows and the deeper recesses of the folds. Continuing the process of bringing these parts up, I do a couple more mixes, adding a little more blue-grey each time. These mixes work their way up to the top of the folds and the sharper edges. It was at this point I started adding the texture with the highlights just to keep things a bit more interesting. There is then a final highlight with more blue-grey in the mix. This step is almost entirely just for texture across the tops of the folds. With all of the blue-grey mixed in, I brought everything too close to grey for my liking, so I tried something new and grabbed my blue glaze paint, went over the coat again, tinting everything back to that blue tone I wanted. Because this is a glaze, I tried to focus my brushstroke towards the recesses so the brightest parts don't get tinted too much and get tide marks. Before calling the coat finished, I need to get the trim and the inner lining painted up. These parts are going to be red, so the base coat of burnt red is going on now, with a couple of coats just to keep it nice and smooth. Just like with the blue, I'll go around with a couple of brighter mixes to establish the highlights. These mixes are done with Vermillion into that burnt red. For the trim around the bottom, I'll try to line up the highlights with the already established highlights on the blue, just for a bit more consistency. The last step on the red is some more Vermillion into the mix, but almost to the point where it's just Vermillion as it doesn't cover too well, just on the very edges and the sharpest parts. Moving on to the remaining clothing, I use the black primer as the base coat and go straight into the mid-tone with some black and Stonewall grey. Even though Stonewall grey is very bright, mixing it in with black keeps it nice and dark, which is the plan as I want these parts to appear black. Keeping the idea of these parts looking black, I only use one more mix for some more Stonewall grey, just to go around these sharpest of edges. Getting onto the skin, I start off with a base coat of Dwarven skin. While I don't like how the skin came out, I will probably go over to Gain at some point, just before I get him on the tabletop. I'm going to leave this part in though so you can see the mistake, as I haven't actually fixed it yet. The base coat is fine, that's how I would normally do skin. The issues come in when I start adding the highlights and mixing some ghost green. Mixing in a lighter tone makes sense to get midtones and highlights in, but my choice of ghost green did not really work out how I intended. I think next time I will do more of a warmer tone and push towards a desaturated skin tone. The idea was that I gave him a sickly ghostly look to that skin, but I should have started with a different base tone. Either a pale green or a purple would possibly work. Moving on to the remaining parts, I grabbed charred brown and began base coating all of the wood, leather, base and the gold parts. All of these parts are getting different highlights, I'm just sharing the shadow colour to save some time painting him up. First of the highlights is the wood and tombstone on the base. These highlights are done with some reddish grey mixed in. There isn't much wood, so it's just 2 pistils really. This step doesn't take too long, which lets me bring them up over a few mixes, just building up those light values. The next section of highlights I get done is the leather parts. These go for some leather brown mixed into that charred brown, just going around all of the belts and the boots. It takes a few mixes to brighten up to the edges and add in a little bit of texture on these parts where they'll be most worn down. Finishing off the leather and getting the hair base coat, I'll grab some pure leather brown. This comes out a little bit brighter than I thought it would, especially on the facial hair, which takes a couple of coats to even be seen against that skin. Before I move back to the charred brown parts, I get the hair finished off with a couple of highlights using a mix of sand yellow and leather brown, just bringing up all of those scoped strands towards the upwards parts. It's time to move on to the metal parts now, with all of these being non-metallic metal. I start off with the gold parts using charred brown as the base and mixing in some sand yellow to start bringing in those reflections. There isn't too much gold on this mini, these areas are fairly small, which lets me build up those reflections fairly quickly with a few mixes of sand yellow, just up until I'm adding the very edges to define the shapes. With the gold all done, I can get the remaining metal part started with a base coat of oxidation green. Originally this was only going to be the sword blade and the armor panels, but there wasn't really much else, so I just added the pistol barrels in at this point as well. Since the sword blade is a standout part of the model, I'm going to be putting in some more time compared to the gold. The first of the reflection step is a mix of some ghost green and establishing their locations. To get some more brightness into the reflections, I added some more ghost green in and just went around the centers of the already established parts, keeping these parts just a little bit smaller than the previous. I now finish off the metal with some more ghost green in the mix just across the edges and the very centers of the reflections. I also added a few extra scratches on the darker parts, which I wouldn't normally do, but I think it just ties the mini together and just finishes it off a little bit and just makes these parts a bit more interesting. The last part is the base that needs a little extra touch up. For everything on the base, I'm going to be just using the colours that I've already got on my palette just to keep things simple. The bones get done with a mix of sand yellow and reddish grey, just bringing up the upper parts and leaving the bottoms of that charred brown. There was a little line across the bottom of the tombstone, which the closest I can get to green is a mix of oxidation green and sand yellow, which comes out very bright, but the next step will darken it back down. That next step being some very thin down leather brown just across the entire base. The plan is to just add some variation to a more natural look without actually changing the colour too much. And there we it for Captain Black Fang. I added some small tufts to the base just to finish it off. I really like how the sword came out and I want to do some more in these colours. I will be doing a Stormcast spearhead in the near future, so I might actually be going with the metallics with this scheme just to see how it turns out. The face, however, I'm really not happy with, so I will be painting that again afterwards, just in a more desaturated skin tone instead of that ghostly green look. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. You can also join Discord using the link in the description, where you can share anything you have been hobbying on, or just hang out and chat. For those of you who want to pick up some new painting supplies or some new minis, there are a couple of affiliate links in the description below. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more content. Most importantly though, be kind to each other.